was its success at the famous Monte Carlo Rally in January 1936, where it came second in its class. By 1938, a total of 72 Monte Carlos had been built with a variety of different bodyworks. In terms of construction, the Popular was a truly revolutionary innovation. The ladder frame was replaced by the spine frame built around a steel tube through which passed the drive shaft. This is the Superb, the most prestigious of Škoda's pre-war cars, and the pinnacle of the new Popular, Rapid, Favorite and Superb ranges. This vehicle already had a central frame and independent suspension, and was powered in this case by a sophisticated 3-litre 6-cylinder engine. Ironically, the majority of vehicles manufactured during the Second World War were used only for military purposes. In 1939, the whole Škoda Group was placed under the ownership of Reichswerke Hermann Göring, AG. The car company was converted to war production, producing parts for planes, chassis for artillery, ammunition and shells. Car production still continued, but declined each year. The most remarkable, though not necessarily the most successful vehicle to emerge from Mladá Boleslav during the war was the bulky four-wheel drive RSO tractor, the Radschlepper Ost, designed by Ferdinand Porsche, no less. The RSO was intended to support the German offensive in Russia. Due to its enormous weight, however, the vehicle had considerable problems in the muddy terrain. Europe was in a joyful mood on the 9th of May 1945 during the first hours of peace. On the same day, however, the air raid sirens in Mladá Boleslav went off for the last time. After the raid, the company made a swift recovery, only to receive another blow a few months later in the form of nationalization. In 1946, the company was renamed AZNP, which in Czech stood for Automobile Factories National Enterprise. From the original Popular evolved the Škoda 1101. The first vehicles came onto the market in May 1946. Motorists gave them the nickname Tudor, two-door, from the English two-door. In February 1948, the communists seized power in Czechoslovakia. The newspapers declared, "We're entering a period of joyous and positive work to raise the living standard for us all." In order to safeguard the peace by all available means, at the beginning of the 1950s, Škoda started its own military production. The spring of 1952 brought the first real change in car manufacturing for a long time. Instead of the bodywork being made of wood covered with pressed steel, metal began to be used as the main component. The new range began with the Škoda 1200 and continued with the Škoda 1201 and 1202. The communist regime had to prove that it cared about the proletariat. It was necessary to develop a car for the people. This was meant to come in the form of the Spartank, or Škoda 440. In 1953, however, as a result of the currency reform, the proletariat lost all their savings, so only the fortunate few were in a position to buy the Spartank. Thanks to continual modernization, the Škoda 440 gradually evolved into the Octavia, which was later also manufactured as an estate car. But without a doubt, the most beautiful Škoda was the 450, later called the Felicia, Happiness. It was given a sporty body with a retractable roof and an improved front axle. In 1961, tail fins appeared on the top edge of the rear mudguards. For a car, advertising advertising is just as important as the engine. The recipe for a good car commercial includes highly appealing images, perfect technical information, and nice-looking women, because it's usually aimed at men. In the 1960s, we used to invent all sorts of images, like pictures of the car or the family going on holiday. It has to be said that cars just weren't available on the market at that time, but we were happy to have at least a nice colour brochure, so that we could show the customer how beautiful it looked. At least they had something to show around at home. Between 1960 and 1964, a completely new factory was built in Mladá Boleslav, equipped with most sophisticated modern technology and comparable with the most advanced car plants in Europe. This was also where the Škoda 1000 MB and the 1100 MB and the two-door variety, the MBX, were all born. For the new series, the new four-cylinder OHV engine was chosen, at that time one of the most advanced in Europe. The reconstruction of the plant represented an amazing leap forward for Mladá Boleslav. Daily production capacity soared from the recent 120 for the Octavia to 600 for the new MBs. The foreign press couldn't praise it enough. Independent tests showed that Škoda had created one of the most modern automobiles in the 1-litre class. The combination of gearbox, final drive and engine in one unit was tried and tested for hundreds of hours under controlled test conditions. Speed, acceleration, spring suspension, stability. Simply a matter of good driving qualities and a long lifespan. This is what both the customer and the manufacturer look for. And one more thing. If you're heading off to the cottage for the weekend or going camping, either in this country or abroad, you'll need a car with a lot of space in it. The Škoda Microbus. Don't be fooled by the advertising carried out at the time. The Škoda 1203 was used only by state enterprises. No private individual could afford it. Here, the new Škoda 100-110 surpassed the 1203. Actually, it wasn't all that new. It was basically the same as the Škoda 1000 MB, with a more modern body and a range of new features. Chassis parts from the Octavia were packed in these crates for the long journey from Czechoslovakia to New Zealand, there to be assembled as the Trekker. This is the Škoda Trekker, built in New Zealand from 1966 on for local farmers.
Very good. Very pleased.
I travel to work in it, use it to go on holiday. The Trekker goes fast enough for me, and I can transport goods in it as well as passengers. In 1970, production began at the subsidiary plant at Kvasiny of the sporty two-door coupe, the Škoda 110R. At 62 horsepower, its performance was less than breathtaking, but it proved a real hit with the customers. But the real racer was the Škoda 130 RS. The 130 was built to be a winning car. This car had already reached such a technical level that it really had to be shown to the rest of the world. What did we get out of it? We used to drive it just for the great feeling it gave us. Here we are standing beside our old racing Škoda 130, which we used to drive in the Monte Carlo Rally and other competitions in the 77-78 season. Right from the start, they looked at us as if we were some outlandish crew from the East. The car looked great, and on top of that, I think the results surprised everyone. For us, the competition conditions played a huge role in the Monte Carlo. The constantly changing surfaces. We fell behind when going uphill, but made up for it when coming down. as the car was light and easy to control. Basically, we had about 100 or 150 horsepower less than the competition, but we were still able to keep up. My personal feeling is that I wasn't afraid of anything those days. Oh, Milan doesn't get scared that often. 100, horizon, left 4, good. I thought we weren't going to make that one. We're now in the Škoda depository, where models and prototypes which didn't make it into production were stored. You could call it a graveyard of ideas and hopes. This beauty is the well-known Škoda 720. The prototype had a real chance of making it into production. The range was prepared, the dies were ready. It was almost there. Unfortunately, this car didn't make it due to the intervention of certain politicians, so it never got the go-ahead from above. This vehicle was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro of Ital Design, who's now a real star in the design world. This was Škoda's first ever collaboration with a foreign designer. The development of a front-engine vehicle was abandoned, and in its place, customers were offered the new 105-120 model, basically a variation of an old theme. The engine remained at the back. The 105-120 was manufactured for 14 years, but despite constant modernization, the concept was already outdated at the time of its creation. To get on the waiting list for their dream Škoda, would-be buyers would take their sleeping bags and line the queue outside Motor Techno, the only dealer in the country. But the company achieved their aim. The automobile was now within reach of the majority of Czechoslovaks. The relatively cheap vehicles aimed at the clientele with modest expectations fulfilled their purpose. Now it was time for bigger changes. The development of a new model became a matter of political urgency. A government decree of 1982 instructed the company to have one completed by June 1985. At that time, it took big car companies between 4 and 5 years to develop a new model. Now, Škoda had to do it in just 2.5. And time kept passing. When I was appointed as the head of development for AZ/NP on the 1st of April 1983, in other words, the Škoda company at that time, my task was to complete the Favorit within 2.25 years. We really didn't have any time to lose. So we took a trip to the Geneva Auto Show, where the majority of world designers are, and finally we headhunted Lucio Bertone. We wanted him to add a bit of beauty to the car. When it comes to beauty in cars, it's all about the out of form, and no one can match the Italians in this area. We produced everything else. In other words, we decided which parts would be bolted, which would be welded, which pressed, and we had to do all the rest of the construction work in order to get the car, the first Škoda with front-wheel drive, onto the road. Škoda remained the only car company in the former Eastern Bloc to continue producing its own models capable of competing with foreign rivals. If it was to develop further, however, it would need a strong partner. Several European car companies expressed an interest, but only Volkswagen was willing to carry on with production of the Favorit and keep the Škoda brand name. On the 16th of April 1991, Škoda joined forces with the conglomerate of VW, Audi and Seat and became the fourth and the oldest brand within the Volkswagen Group. In 1994, production started on the new Škoda Felicia. As well as its own current range of engines, Škoda now also offered Volkswagen engines. And for the first time, Škodas were fitted with airbags as an optional extra. In time, estate and pickup versions were introduced. With the introduction of the Octavia range in 1996, the company regained its status as one of the leading car manufacturers in Europe. Another new range was introduced with the Škoda Fabia. The car company entered the higher end of the market in 2001 with another new model, the Superb, which was presented at the Frankfurt Motor Show. In 2004 came another great success with the new Škoda Octavia, and once again in 2007 with the Škoda Fabia. And let's not forget the Roadster, launched in 2006. The Superb's second generation was presented at the Geneva Motor Show in 2008. Its name recalls the successful pre-war model and confirms the company's ambition to rank among the top car manufacturers in the luxury category. For the development of the new Superb, it was naturally also quite an important source of inspiration for us to delve into the past. There had already been one Superb. It had a range of different interiors. It offered a lot of space, but also lots of refined details, which inspired us to think about the new Superb. The new Superb obviously has many strong points, but if I had to choose three of them, I would mention above all its classiness, innovative design, and top quality engineering.
Das Thema Hochwertigkeit möchte ich an